He died protecting me. Then I had to protect his legacy. Blaze wasn't just a pet. He was Anna's shadow, her shield, her family. He once took down a would-be intruder before the man even touched the door. He never asked for anything, just to be near her. So when his hind legs began to tremble, she did what any loving owner would, sought help, a new drug, promising, safe, they said. It wasn't. Within days, his eyes dulled. Within weeks, he couldn't breathe. As Anna held his head one last time beneath the dogwood tree, her grief turned to rage. Blaze had saved her life. Now she would save others in his name. Even if it meant taking down a billion-dollar company. Even if it meant risking everything. The clinic smelled like antiseptic and lavender, an odd, almost cruel mix of sterility and comfort. Anna sat hunched on the cold steel bench, her arms wrapped protectively around Blaze's thinning frame. The old German shepherd trembled slightly, his breathing shallow and uneven, nostrils flaring with effort. His once sharp ears, always alert like twin radar towers scanning the world, now drooped lifelessly to the sides. Time had not just passed, it had scraped its claws through him. She pressed her forehead gently to his, eyes closed. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, barely more than a breath. "You were always the strong one." The overhead light flickered faintly as the door creaked open. Dr. Rowan Hayes stepped in, his lab coat loose around a frame that looked more burdened than tired. He didn't speak right away. Just stood there for a moment, watching the way Anna held Blaze, as if the force of her grief could stitch him back together. Anna looked up. Her eyes were raw, reddened, as if every blink held back another flood. He stopped eating. I thought maybe it was just the meds making him nauseous. But then he stopped drinking. And today, her voice cracked. He didn't even lift his head when I came home. Rowan moved slowly, setting the syringe tray on the counter with a quiet clink. His voice was low, respectful. "We don't have to rush, if you need more time." "No," she cut in, shaking her head. "I can't let him suffer anymore. He saved me. I owe him peace." Blaze let out a faint exhale that sounded almost like a sigh. Rowan knelt beside him, one hand brushing gently down the side of the dog's rib cage, feeling the bony rise and fall. A ghost of the powerhouse that once charged through floodwater like a myth. As Rowan prepped the injection pentobarbital in a dosage meant to still even the most restless heart, his eyes drifted over Blaze's body. That's when he paused. Something wasn't right. "Anna, has Blaze been drooling more than usual?" he asked, frowning as he reached for a pen light. She blinked. "A little. I thought it was just age, or the Canalife Plus they put him on last month. Why?" Rowan gently parted Blaze's lips. The gums were inflamed dark red, almost angry. More telling, though, was the subtle yellow tinge around the sclera of his eyes. Not just age-related jaundice, something more systemic. He stood up, setting the needle down, untouched. "We're not doing this. Not yet." Anna's eyes shot wide. "What? What do you mean?" "There's something off here. This doesn't look like natural decline. His liver could be compromised. I want to run a full panel blood work, liver enzymes, kidney function. If this is something we can reverse even slightly, you need to know." "But," her voice trembled, "Rowan, he's in pain. He's barely moving." He met her eyes. "Yes, but what if the pain is from something we gave him? What if it's treatable?" The silence stretched. The hum of the overhead light filled the void. Anna looked down at Blaze, then back up at Rowan. "You think it's the Canalife Plus?" "I don't want to jump to conclusions, but I've had 2 other dogs on it this quarter. Similar symptoms. We need answers." Anna felt a fresh wave of emotion crash into her chest, this time not just grief but confusion, guilt, and something like hope, though she didn't dare name it. Her hands trembled as she nodded. "Do it, whatever it takes." Rowan wrapped the syringe back in its sterile wrap, sliding it into a tray that now felt more like a weapon than a mercy. He gently stroked Blaze's head. "Hang in there, buddy." Blaze didn't respond. But as Rowan exited to begin the lab work, Anna thought she saw the tip of his tail twitch just once. A flicker that lit something deep inside her, like a candle sputtering back to life in a storm. She leaned in again, whispering as her tears slid down into his fur. "We're not saying goodbye. Not yet. Not today." It had rained for days, but no one expected the levee to give. The sky that morning had turned the color of old bruises, deep gray, with pulses of lightning tearing through the horizon like veins of rage. When the dam broke, it wasn't just water that rushed into the valley. It was chaos, screams, sirens, entire streets swept away in muddy torrents like forgotten sketches on wet paper. Anna remembered none of the first wave, just the sound-deafening, monstrous before everything went dark. When she opened her eyes, she was half submerged in freezing, churning water, wedged between 2 collapsed beams in what used to be her apartment hallway. Her shoulders screamed with pain, blood mixed with the brown water in swirling ribbons. Every breath tasted like rust and sewage. Her limbs were numb, but she could still hear it, the sound of rushing water, creaking walls, something groaning as it gave way above her. Then, pause. She didn't see him at first, just felt the sudden weight against her chest, something warm, something solid. Then the low, insistent bark, slicing through the panic like a flare in the dark. A German shepherd stood above her, soaked to the bone, his eyes locked on hers, clear, focused, unshakable. No collar, no handler in sight, just instinct and duty wrapped in fur and muscle. He nosed her gently, then gripped the collar of her jacket with surprising care. Inch by inch, he pulled. Her body scraped against debris and shattered glass, but the pain barely registered. She blacked out again, somewhere between the collapsed stairwell and what had once been the lobby. When she came to, she was lying on a patch of broken tile, head resting against something warm. The dog hadn't left her side. The air outside was chaos helicopters shouting, engines revving through standing water. Rescuers ran past, barely glancing her way until one stopped and shouted, "We've got a live one! She's got a canine with her!" Anna tried to speak, but her throat was raw. The only thing she could do was turn her head, eyes searching for the dog again. He stood a few feet away now, watching from behind the EMTs, soaked and panting but calm, like a sentry who had completed his mission. That night at the triage center, she asked every responder who the dog belonged to. They brought her a name, Blaze, K9 274. Handler, Officer Daniel Quinn. Status, deceased. Died in a secondary rescue attempt. Blaze had gone missing after that, until he found her. The days after blurred. She woke in hospital beds, drifting in and out of consciousness. But always, at the edge of each waking hour, was Blaze, quiet, watching, as if guarding her from the nightmares neither of them could name. No one claimed him. No surviving family for Officer Quinn. The department offered to reassign Blaze, but Anna refused. "He saved my life," she told them, voice still weak. "We're both survivors. Let us stay that way, together." Back in the present, Anna sat on the clinic floor, gently brushing her fingers through Blaze's fur. Her eyes glistened with memory. "You remember that night, don't you?" she whispered, her voice cracking with the weight of 5 years. Blaze didn't move, but his breathing slowed deeper now, more even. "Everyone else ran away. You ran toward me. I was a stranger, bleeding, trapped. And you didn't hesitate." She swallowed hard, the ghost of floodwater still lingering in her lungs. "You were never just a dog. You were the reason I started breathing again. In every way." The memory burned behind her eyes. Blaze, soaked, battered, but relentless in pulling her to life. The look in his eyes, focused, fearless, unshaken by the weight of death. She leaned forward, forehead pressed gently to his. "You're not done yet. Not if I can help it." Outside, rain began to fall again, but it no longer roared. It whispered. The syringe never touched his vein. Dr. Rowan Hayes stood frozen, the capped needle still in his gloved hand, hovering just inches from Blaze's trembling foreleg. His gaze, however, was locked elsewhere, on the sickly yellow tint in Blaze's eyes and the angry red along his gum line. 2 details, tiny, subtle. But to Rowan they shouted. "Wait," he murmured, mostly to himself. His brows furrowed, something flickering behind his usually steady gaze. "Something's off." Anna blinked up at him, her arms still wrapped protectively around Blaze's frail body. Her breath was shallow, raw from crying. "What do you mean?" she asked, voice a breath above a whisper. Rowan stepped back slowly, returning the syringe to its tray. He pulled off his gloves and sat heavily on the stool beside the exam table. "Anna, I've seen a lot of dogs reach this stage, but this doesn't feel right." Her hands tightened instinctively around Blaze, as if the act of holding him together might keep him from unraveling. "You said he started going downhill after the new meds, right?" Rowan asked. Anna nodded. "Yeah, a week ago. The Canalife plus the new one for joint pain and aging working dogs. It's supposed to help with inflammation." Rowan exhaled sharply through his nose. "I read about it last month. Fast-tracked approval. Lots of big promises. But I haven't used it in my own cases. Too soon. Too many unknowns." Blaze stirred weakly at the sound of Anna's voice. His tail gave a feeble thump against the padded mat, the sound so faint it barely registered. But it was enough. Enough to jolt Anna from despair into something murkier. Hesitant, not quite hope, but something. "You think this could be a reaction?" she asked, eyes suddenly searching. Rowan nodded slowly. "There's swelling in his gums. Liver discoloration. I've seen similar markers in dogs with toxic reactions. Nothing conclusive yet, but it's enough to make me pause." Anna looked down at Blaze, her fingers instinctively moving to stroke the fur between his ears. The same patch she used to scratch after long shifts, the same place he pressed against her when storms passed through. "I was ready to let him go," she whispered. "I thought it would be selfish not to." "It would have been merciful," Rowan replied gently. "But now that we've seen this, now that we know, we hold off." The silence between them was deep, charged. Then Rowan stood. "I want you to stop the Canalife Plus immediately. No more doses. I'll run some blood work and liver panels right now, but if this is what I think it is, he might bounce back. Slowly, maybe. But we give him that chance." Anna stared at the table for a long moment before speaking. Her hands trembled. "Then we go home," she said, more to Blaze than to Rowan. "We go home and wait." The sky had shifted by the time Anna stepped out of the clinic. Blaze wrapped gently in a navy fleece blanket against her chest. The rain had thinned into a cold drizzle, almost apologetic. It tapped lightly against the windshield as she opened the passenger door and settled him onto the thick quilt she kept in the footwell. The seatbelt click felt absurd, like some fragile illusion of normalcy. But she did it anyway. As she drove, her mind spun through 1,000 versions of the past week, every limp, every pained exhale Blaze had given, every moment she'd spent preparing herself for goodbye. And now, with no certainty in hand, she was suspended in something worse than grief. Waiting. The house felt quieter than usual when she carried Blaze inside. No wagging tail, no click of claws on hardwood. Just the slow thump of her heartbeat and the distant hum of the refrigerator. She laid him on the couch, their couch, the one he always claimed when she wasn't looking. The same spot where he'd nudged her arm during night shifts, resting his head beside her laptop until she closed it and remembered to breathe. "Rest here," she murmured, tucking the blanket in gently. "You're not done yet." Blaze opened one eye, and for the briefest flicker of a second, it was brighter than before. She sat beside him in silence for hours, running her fingers along the soft fur behind his ear, breathing in the scent of him, faintly medicinal now, tinged with the sterile cold of the vet's office, but still him. And when she finally closed her own eyes, forehead resting gently against his shoulder, a single thought pulsed through her chest like a quiet vow. If there's even a sliver of hope, we hold on to it. Together. The first night back home was a slow unraveling of time. Anna sat cross-legged on the floor beside the couch, a spiral notebook open on her knee. The pages were already smudged, some with ink, some with something saltier. Her pen hovered over the next line as she glanced up at Blaze, who lay curled beneath a thick wool blanket, his breathing shallow but steady. Vitals, weak, irregular but present. Appetite, refused soft kibble, licked broth. Gums still inflamed, eyes slightly clearer than yesterday. She paused before the final line. Demeanor. How could she quantify that? How could she reduce a soul, because that's what Blaze was to her, to a word? He hadn't barked in days. Hadn't nudged her elbow or followed her to the fridge like he always did, nose pressed against her calf, tail gently thumping against kitchen tiles. But there was something in the way he looked at her tonight, like he knew she was watching, like he wanted her to see. "Still here?" she whispered, eyes burning. She clicked the pen closed. The house was cloaked in hush. Even the wind outside seemed to tiptoe, rattling the bare branches against the windows like cautious fingers. Anna left the notebook on the table and turned off the last lamp. But she didn't leave the room. Instead, she dragged down a folded quilt from the hallway closet, spread it carefully beside the couch, and lay down. Her body ached from the long crouches at the clinic, the grief she'd carried in the waiting room, and now this, the ache of not knowing. She turned her face toward Blaze, his outline a still silhouette in the dark. "I was so sure," she murmured, "that we were saying goodbye today." Her voice cracked, like something ancient in her chest had just splintered. Blaze didn't stir, but his ear flicked once at the sound of her voice. That was enough. Enough to tighten her throat again. Anna reached a hand up, resting it gently on the couch where his paw hung limply off the edge. She let her thumb stroke across the coarse fur that had once been warm from sun and sidewalk runs. Now it was cool, but not lifeless. still tethered, her eyes shut, but sleep wouldn't come easily. In the haze between wake and dream, the memories crept in, not like a film reel, more like old photographs catching light scattered and glowing. Blaze at the park, charging after pigeons with all the grace of a wrecking ball, ears too big for his head. Blaze waiting by the front door during a thunderstorm, eyes fixed on the driveway, as if sensing her return before she pulled in. Blaze curled beside her on the bathroom floor the night she got food poisoning and thought she might die from both ends. Blaze at the children's ward Christmas party, dressed in those ridiculous antlers she bought on a dare, patiently letting the kids decorate him with glittery ribbons and stickers. A quiet laugh escaped her lips in the dark, tangled with a sob. He had never been just a pet. He was her shadow, her tether, the thing that had kept her grounded through everything, especially the unspeakable aftermath of the flood. When everyone told her she was lucky to survive, it was Blaze who made her believe it. Lucky wasn't what she felt when she woke up in that floodwater, lungs burning, heart pounding, unsure if she was about to drown or already had. Lucky wasn't what she felt when they told her the dog who pulled her out was an orphan too, his handler lost in another part of the storm, but alive. That was what they were. And somehow, in each other, they had found the reason to stay that way. The clock read 2:41 a.m. when Blaze whimpered in his sleep. Anna jolted upright, the blanket tangled around her legs. She leaned in. His body shivered, a tremor low in the ribs. Then it stopped. He let out a slow breath, tail twitching once. She reached for the notebook, now backlit by the moonlight spilling through the curtains. Scribbled 2:41 a.m. Slight tremor, no distress. She didn't know what it meant. But if Rowan was right, if this was some kind of reaction, they needed to document everything. He deserved that much. No, he deserved more. By dawn, the world was dipped in silver fog. Anna sat on the steps of the back porch, a mug of bitter coffee cradled in both hands, watching the sun claw its way over the distant treetops. Inside, Blaze slept on, not deeply, not well, but still. He slept, and she stayed half woman, half statue, knowing that daylight wouldn't answer anything. But at least they'd made it through the long night, together. The fourth morning broke with the stillness of a held breath. Anna stood by the kitchen window, fingers gripping the edge of the counter, staring into the steam rising from her coffee like it might spell out the answer she couldn't say aloud. It had been 4 days since she and Rowan stopped the Canalife Plus injections. 4 days of watching Blaze with a kind of suspended heartbreak, each hour holding him like porcelain, afraid even to blink. The vet had said it could take time, or it might not change anything. Rowan had been careful with his words, gentle even, but Anna had read between the lines. This wasn't about cure. This was about chance. And chance, Anna knew too well, was rarely kind. The house was quiet. She hadn't turned on music in days, not even the classical playlists Blaze used to nap to. The ticking of the wall clock felt deafening. She turned toward the living room, bracing herself for the same scene as the past 3 mornings. A still figure under wool blankets, breathing shallow, unmoved by the world. But as she stepped into the doorway, she froze. Blaze wasn't asleep. He was watching her, one eye half-lidded but open, alert. A flicker of something familiar lived in that gaze. The ghost of the dog she remembered, the one who could sense her mood before she even opened her mouth. And then his tail moved. Once, just a faint, dragging flick against the throw rug. But it was real, undeniable. Anna dropped the mug. It hit the floor with a dull thud, coffee sloshing over her bare feet, but she didn't notice. "Blaze?" she breathed, stepping closer. His ear perked faintly. She knelt, eyes locked with his. "Hey, buddy, you're still fighting, huh?" She didn't expect an answer. But the weight in her chest cracked open as he sniffed a soft, labored inhale, like he recognized her scent again. Anna moved gently, almost reverently, toward the kitchen. She pulled a can of prescription wet food from the cabinet and scooped it onto a saucer, warming it just a few seconds to release the scent. Her hands trembled the whole time. She placed the dish on the floor, crouching beside it, heart hammering. Blaze didn't lunge or gobble, but his nose twitched. He noticed. Then, painfully, slowly he pushed himself to his elbows and crawled forward a few inches. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't fast. But it was movement. Anna didn't breathe. His tongue touched the food. Once, then again, and again. Tears welled in her eyes, quiet, stubborn, unstoppable. She turned her face away, burying her mouth into her sleeve to muffle the sob, because she couldn't let him see her fall apart now. Not now, when he was trying, but she cried anyway. Not the kind of grief-soaked sobs she'd been bottling for days. These were the quieter ones, the kind that come when something dead refuses to stay buried, the kind that say, maybe. Maybe this isn't the end after all. That evening she documented everything. Day 4, 8:12 a.m. Alert gaze, tail movement, 1x. Sniffed food, 8:25 a.m. Consumed approx. 1 TBSP of wet food, chicken and rice. Breathing shallow but stronger. No tremors observed. Mood, responsive. No vocalization yet. She stared at the last line. Responsive. She wrote it again, in all caps, underlined it. Then she closed the notebook and sat back, knees pulled to her chest. The silence was no longer oppressive. It felt suspended, like the moment between lightning and thunder. That night, as she dimmed the lights and curled up beside Blaze again, she whispered to him, "You scared me." Blaze blinked slowly. His paw shifted just an inch toward her hand. "But I'm still here," she said. "I'm not going anywhere. Neither are you." The dog didn't respond, not in words, but his breathing deepened, slower now, less strained. And Anna, for the first time in days, allowed herself a breath that didn't taste like goodbye. The leash felt foreign in Anna's hand. It had been weeks since she last clipped it to Blaze's collar back when he still had the strength to stand without shaking. But now, on the 5th morning, he was upright. Shaky, yes. But standing, it wasn't a miracle, not yet. But it was something like a resurrection. She knelt beside him, gently brushing a hand over his shoulder. The once burly German shepherd had lost weight. His hips sharper now, fur dull in patches, but there was light again in his eyes. Not the full flame he used to carry, but a flicker. And she would take that. 1,000 times over, she would take that. "Just the block," she whispered. "Only if you're ready." Blaze looked up at her, and for the briefest moment she could have sworn. He nodded. The first few steps were clumsy. He moved like someone who remembered dancing but had forgotten his legs. Each paw landed with cautious care, his hind leg swaying as if unsure whether to cooperate. Anna walked slowly, matching his rhythm, the leash hanging loose between them like an old memory, finally returning to form. The sun had just crested over the rooftops, spilling soft gold across the sidewalk. The neighborhood was quiet, dew still clinging to grass tips and mailboxes. But a breeze rolled down the street, carrying a scent that made Blaze pause. He lifted his nose, sniffed, then took another step. Halfway down the block, Mrs. Delaney froze on her porch. She had been watering her begonias in her bathrobe, hair pinned in curlers, when she spotted them. "Oh, my Lord," she breathed, dropping the watering can to the steps. Anna gave her a small wave. Mrs. Delaney didn't wave back. She clutched her chest like her heart had skipped something essential. That's Blaze?" Anna nodded. Her throat was too tight to speak. The old woman stepped closer, one cautious foot at a time. "But the vet van, I thought—" "We did too," Anna said quietly. "But he wasn't ready." Mrs. Delaney's eyes shimmered. "He saved my grandson during the flood," she whispered, like confessing to a priest. "You know that, don't you? Pulled him from the garage. They said a dog couldn't think like that, but I know it was him." Blaze, as if hearing her, stopped and looked toward the porch. His tail moved, just once, and Mrs. Delaney wept into her hands. By the time they turned the corner, a few more heads had turned. Windows cracked open. The whispers began. "Is that Blaze? No way. I thought he passed. That dog pulled my niece off a fence post during the flood. That's him. I'd know that walk anywhere." Anna kept her eyes forward, not out of pride, but to keep the lump in her throat from spilling over. When they passed the corner mailbox, a familiar rumble came up the street, bright red and dusty. It was Tommy, the mailman. Mid-40s, wiry, with a sun-scorched neck and a walking limp that had nothing to do with age. The second he saw them, he hit the brakes and stepped out of the truck. Blaze froze. Tommy crouched instinctively, his face softening. "Hey, partner," he murmured. "Been a minute." Anna didn't say a word, just nodded at Tommy, giving him permission to come closer. Blaze took a step forward, then another, and when Tommy knelt and held out his hand, Blaze sniffed it. Then, astonishingly, he pressed his head into the man's palm. Tommy exhaled like someone releasing years. "You remember me, huh? You used to bark at me like I was smuggling bombs." Anna smiled through the sting in her eyes. Tommy shook his head slowly. "Damn, I thought we lost you. Everyone did." "He almost didn't make it," she said softly. "But he did," Tommy said, and his voice cracked right down the middle. "He did." They made it around the entire block. It took nearly an hour, with rest stops on cool patches of shade, and Anna carrying him for the last 10 feet up the porch steps. But Blaze had done it. And when they returned to the living room, he collapsed into his blanket nest with a soft huff of contentment, not pain. Anna sat beside him and whispered, "You walked the whole block, big guy." His eyes closed. And for the first time since the clinic, Anna allowed herself to smile without guilt. Outside, the neighbors buzzed with quiet awe. Inside, a war-weary dog rested like he'd finally won a small battle. But deep inside Anna's heart, a new seed had been planted. If this is possible, what else might be? The clinic always smelled faintly of antiseptic and lavender. It was something Rowan insisted on, a balance between clinical sterility and emotional softness. He knew too well that people didn't just bring their animals here to heal. They brought their fear, their guilt, and their hope. Anna sat hunched on the edge of the bench, Blaze resting at her feet. The old shepherd had dozed off, his breathing shallow but steady. His head, though gray-muzzled and thin, rested between his paws like it used to in better days. Rowan noticed that his ears occasionally flicked at passing sounds. It was a small, irrelevant motion. But not to Rowan. It meant brain function, awareness. A dog not just surviving, but present. He drew in a slow breath and turned back to the bloodwork results on the glowing screen. The numbers stared back at him. Liver enzymes, ALT, ALP, GGT, had been spiraling dangerously just a week ago. Now, stabilizing, still elevated, but no longer free-falling. "Blaze," Rowan muttered under his breath. "You stubborn, impossible miracle." Anna looked up at that. "What does it mean?" she asked, almost afraid to hope. Her voice was the kind people use when waiting for bad news, even after hearing good. Rowan angled the screen toward her. "It means his liver function is no longer declining. There's even a slight correction in his bilirubin levels, which tells me whatever was attacking his liver has stopped." She blinked. "You mean—" "I mean, it might not have been organ failure due to age. Not completely. Something triggered a rapid deterioration. And something else stopped it." Anna's hand slid slowly to Blaze's head. "The only thing we stopped was Canalife Plus." That name had been clanging in the back of Rowan's mind for 3 days. He opened a second tab on his screen, pulling up the patient database from the last quarter. Canalife Plus was a popular new supplement marketed toward aging dogs. Promoted as a gentle liver and joint support formula, it had been rolled out with aggressive sales reps and even more aggressive discounts. Rowan hadn't thought much of it until Blaze. He keyed in the name of another patient, Rex, a 10-year-old Malinois. Rex had collapsed last month, showing similar symptoms: jaundice, lethargy, inflamed gums, vomiting. His owner had been distraught, convinced it was cancer. They'd euthanized him before further tests could be done, but Rowan now saw it. Rex had also been on Canalife Plus. Rowan's fingers paused above the keyboard. Then he typed again. "Maggie, a 12-year-old lab mix. The same pattern, healthy, stable. Started Canalife Plus in March. By May, jaundice, liver shutdown." Anna, watching him, whispered, "Rowan?" He didn't look away from the screen. His pulse had started to rise, not from panic, but from the cold coil of realization. 3 dogs. 3 different breeds. Same pattern. All on the same supplement. All presenting as terminal rapidly and without explanation. He turned to Anna. "And only one of them made it long enough for us to stop the medication." Blaze. He pulled open a drawer and retrieved a half-used bottle of Canalife Plus, the same one Anna had brought in when they first discussed Blaze's decline. The label was sleek, bright green and gold, with the usual promises in bold font. "Supports senior vitality. Gentle on aging organs. Veterinarian approved." Rowan flipped it over. Ingredients: milk thistle, turmeric, glucosamine, proprietary liver enzyme blend, natural flavoring. But the word proprietary always made his skin itch. He grabbed a sterile swab, opened the bottle, and carefully collected a small sample. "I want to send this to the lab," he said. "Not the in-house diagnostics and independent tox panel." Anna said nothing for a long moment. Then, "You think it's poison?" Rowan shook his head. "I think it's negligence, maybe contamination, maybe a compound that wasn't tested on elderly dogs properly. But this isn't random, Anna. This is a pattern. And if Blaze hadn't gotten so close to the edge—" She didn't finish the sentence for him. Neither did he. Instead, she looked down at Blaze. The dog stirred faintly, as if sensing the shift in energy. Anna's voice was a whisper. "He saved me once. From drowning. Maybe he's saving others now." Rowan met her gaze. "Then we owe it to him to follow this all the way." Later, when Anna left with Blaze, the dog moving a little steadier than yesterday, Rowan stood alone in the clinic office. He looked at the screen again. 3 dogs, 3 deaths, almost. One common denominator, Canalife Plus. And yet, the product remained on shelves. Shelves Rowan had seen in local pet stores just this morning. Something churned deep in his gut. Blaze had come back, and in doing so, he may have brought something with him. A warning, a chance, a key. Rowan turned off the monitor and reached for his phone. He had a call to make. The journal arrived in a simple brown envelope, unmarked, unassuming. Anna found it tucked beside a bag of prescription food samples Rowan had given her after Blaze's last visit. She might have missed it entirely if not for the blue post-it stuck to the front cover in Rowan's unmistakably sharp, slanted handwriting. Document everything. Even hope leaves evidence. R.H. She stood in the doorway for a moment, the house quiet around her, Blaze sleeping near the window where the sun spilled in. He had taken to that corner lately, curling himself into a slow-moving crescent of fur and breath and warmth. She swore he chose it because it was the only place in the house where the afternoon light stayed long enough to feel like a promise. Anna sat at the kitchen table and opened the first page. The journal's spine cracked like something old and tender coming back to life. Day 1, 7:13 a.m. Vitals. Breathing steady, 22-minute heart rate mild and even. Mood. Alert followed me from bedroom to kitchen. Food intake. 1/2 cup boiled chicken, hand-fed, no vomiting. Behavior. Tail thump when I mentioned walk. Tried to sit up, wobbly but focused. Underneath, she hesitated, then added, eyes brighter today. Still not the same dog I met in the flood, but maybe the one he became after. The act of writing steadied her, measured her. Fragments of panic stilled when given shape and ink. Blaze stirred nearby, lifting his head with the sleepy gravity of an old soul not quite ready to give up. His eyes caught hers. They no longer looked sunken, just deep. That night, after he ate a second time and curled beside her legs like he used to, Anna opened her laptop. She hadn't logged onto the dog forums in over a year, not since Blaze's hips first began giving out, and her posts had shifted from light-hearted updates to long questions no one seemed able to answer. But now she typed, subject, Blaze is recovering and I don't know why. 5 days ago I was going to say goodbye. His gums were yellow. He hadn't eaten in 72 hours. My vet prepped for euthanasia. Then something changed. I took him off Canalife Plus. He started showing small signs, tail flicks, small meals, a short walk. Has anyone else experienced sudden liver issues after starting that supplement? Please, I just need to know I'm not imagining this. Anna and Blaze, M. Shepherd, 12-year-old, retired K9. She clicked post, then closed the laptop. Outside, crickets chirped in the dark like distant clocks. Blaze sighed in his sleep. By the next morning, there were 12 responses. By the evening, there were 47. By the end of the week, over 200 pet owners had messaged her directly or commented publicly, sharing eerily similar stories. Dogs that declined suddenly after Canalife Plus. Some were older shepherds, some were retrievers. A few were mixes. One woman from Minnesota had lost 2 dogs within months, both on the supplement, both euthanized under the diagnosis of rapid liver failure. Anna read until her eyes stung. She copied every relevant post, printing them out and adding them to a folder beside Blaze's journal. Each printout felt like a testimony, a record, A flag raised too late, but raised nonetheless. She added a new entry in her journal. Day 6, 8:42 p.m. Blaze walked halfway to the mailbox and back. Took a break in the grass, but wagged his tail at Mrs. Glennon. People are writing. We're not alone. Maybe it wasn't age. Maybe it was something no one wanted to question. Until now. That night, Anna placed her palm against Blaze's ribs and felt the slow, even rhythm of his breath. It no longer felt like borrowed time. It felt like something else. A reprieve. A beginning. The edge of something bigger than either of them. She looked over at the journal on the nightstand. The words inside weren't just for Blaze anymore. They were for every dog whose decline had been dismissed as natural, and for every owner who had been told it was just old age, for every goodbye that might have been premature. And she would write them all down, because someday someone would need proof. The rain started around 2 a.m., a slow, insistent tapping against the windows of Rowan Hayes's clinic office. He sat hunched at his desk, glasses slipping to the tip of his nose, sleeves rolled up, a legal pad covered in a scrawl of red and black ink in front of him. The room was quiet except for the occasional hum of the mini fridge and the soft click of his keyboard. Blaze's file sat open, its yellow tab now flagged with 3 color-coded stickers. Beside it, 8 others, each labeled with names like Gunner, Daisy, Rex, and Bella. The stack wasn't from his clinic. These were printed records forwarded from colleagues across the state. What began as a hunch had become something else. He clicked open the most recent email from Dr. Lana Murray, a friend in Asheville. 8YO Golden Retriever, on Canalife Plus for joint stiffness. Liver values deteriorated by week 3. Jaundice, tremors. Euthanized by week 6. We assumed it was age, but now I'm not so sure. Below her note was an attached spreadsheet: dosage records, onset of symptoms, medical history. Rowan's cursor hovered over the data like it might flinch. He didn't move for a long time. Then, slowly, he reached into his bottom drawer and pulled out Blaze's blood work before and after the drug. The patterns were nearly identical. Kidney stress, elevated liver enzymes, mild neurological signs, and a sudden decline that made no linear medical sense, unless you were looking for a catalyst. By dawn, he had 9 files spread across his desk, each one bearing a post-it in the same messy handwriting. Over 8 years old, Canalife Plus, sudden organ failure. The rain hadn't stopped. It pooled outside the clinic steps, curling in lazy eddies around the wheels of his parked truck. Rowan barely noticed it. What chilled him wasn't just the similarities. It was the silence. These were smart vets, experienced, but they'd all written off the symptoms as age-related decline, coincidental timing, or late-stage disease. None of them had questioned the supplement. Because why would they? Canalife Plus had been marketed as a miracle for aging pets, promising improved mobility, liver support, cognitive sharpness. The packaging featured a happy retriever bounding through autumn leaves. A vet-approved sticker glinted in the top right corner. It was everywhere. He himself had stocked it. The realization hit like cold water down his spine. He stood up, walked over to the whiteboard near the fridge, and began jotting in red marker. Case 1. Blaze. 12YEO-GSD. Recovery post-withdrawal. Case 2. Gunner. 9Y-RO Lab. Tremors. Liver failure. Case 3. Bella. 10. Y-O Boxer. Muscle atrophy. Jaundice. By the time he reached Case 9, he was staring at a chain he hadn't wanted to acknowledge. Same age range, same supplement, same sequence. Initial energy boost, mild tremors, jaundice, collapse. And in only one case, Blaze had the dog survived, because they had stopped the drug just in time. Rowan stepped back, marker cap clicking in his hand. His chest was tight, not from fear, from certainty. This wasn't bad luck. This was a pattern. He sat back down and opened a new email. To Dr. Lana Murray, Dr. Ellis Rourke, Dr. Cam Patel. Subject: urgent. Canalife plus adverse pattern. I believe we're looking at an emerging toxicity cluster. 9 dogs, multiple counties, all over 8 years. Symptoms: tremors, yellow sclera, ALT, AST spikes, kidney compromise. All were administered Canalife Plus within 30 days of onset. Only one survived following immediate cessation. Please confirm if your charts reflect similar trends. This might be bigger than we thought. R. Hayes. His finger hovered over send. Then he added, P.S. Don't write it off as coincidence. That's how we all missed it the first time. An hour later, Rowan stood outside the exam room where Anna was waiting with Blaze. He watched through the glass as she scratched the old shepherd behind the ears, murmuring something that made his tail thump twice against the linoleum. It struck him then how close they'd come to losing this dog, how easily the story could have ended 4 scenes ago with a syringe and soft words, and no one ever questioning what pushed him over the edge. He exhaled and stepped inside. Anna looked up, searching his face. Is something wrong? Rowan shook his head. No, not wrong, he said slowly. But maybe. Finally making sense. The house smelled off. Anna paused on the threshold, keys still dangling from her fingers. Blaze's leash looped around her wrist. The front door had been locked just as she'd left it that morning, but something in the air felt violated. Not the scent of cinnamon potpourri she kept on the side table, not the lingering trace of Blaze's fur. It was the smell of disturbance, a mix of turned soil and cold sweat, like the air itself had been bruised. She stepped inside. The late sun, filtering through the window blinds, slanted across the floor in perfect golden bars, undisturbed at first glance. But then the details began to emerge. A cushion on the floor, the drawer to the hallway console left ajar, a framed photo of Blaze, freshly cleaned last weekend, now face down with a crack across the glass. Her pulse kicked up. She unclipped Blaze's leash, watching as the dog sniffed the air with more interest than usual. He didn't growl, but his body tensed. Even old, even recovering, his instincts were sharp. He padded to the living room, nose twitching. Anna followed with caution in her breath. The TV was untouched. So was her laptop. A ceramic vase, worthless, sentimental, still sat on the shelf. Nothing looked stolen. And yet, the coffee table drawers were open. Her filing tray overturned. She hurried to her small office. Papers littered the floor like autumn leaves. Tax forms, vet receipts, a printout of Blaze's early rescue story for a blog she'd never submitted. And gone. The folder, the bright red one, the one labeled Blaze, Canalife Plus, Notes, Records. It had held copies of every vet visit since his collapse. Daily logs. The drug insert. Rowan's initial suspicion notes. Even a printout of the spreadsheet he'd shared cases from out of state. She'd tucked it away in the desk's second drawer, thinking it too obscure for interest, thinking it was just their story. But now it was the only thing missing. She turned in a slow circle. Panic crept up her neck in a cold flush. Who would want his file? She whispered it aloud to the empty room. Blaze huffed once behind her, standing in the hallway, eyes fixed on the door like he, too, knew something had shifted. He didn't bark, but his stare was unmoving. Anna walked back to the living room and dialed Rowan. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey, is Blaze okay?" I don't know," she said. Her voice trembled. "Someone's been in my house." There was silence on the other end. Then, "You mean a break-in?" "I think so. But they didn't take nothing obvious. Just Blaze's medical file. The red folder." He cursed under his breath. "Stay where you are. I'm coming over." "No, wait," she said quickly. "They're gone. And I need to process this before I lose my mind." Another beat of silence. "Anna," he said finally, "you think this has something to do with the reports?" "I didn't say that," she whispered. "But you're thinking it." A lump rose in her throat. "Someone wanted that file. Not my jewelry, not my work laptop. Just that." 10 minutes later, a police officer stood in her hallway scribbling into a small notebook. His name tag read, "Martinez." "No forced entry," he muttered. "You sure the door was locked?" "Yes, absolutely." Anna stood with her arms crossed tightly against her chest. Blaze sat by her feet, uncharacteristically still. Martinez looked around. "You have any enemies?" She blinked. "No. I'm a substitute teacher and I volunteer at the shelter." "Boyfriend? Ex?" "None." He looked around again, lips pressed. "Might have been a squatter or a random check-in. Drug seekers sometimes break in looking for pills. Anything like that in the house?" "Nothing stronger than ibuprofen," she said. He jotted something down, but she could already tell the report would be thin. Routine. Filed away with no follow-up. Another unknown suspect, no signs of forced entry case. But she knew better. This wasn't about opiates or accidents. This was targeted. That night, Anna couldn't sleep. She lay on the couch with Blaze curled beside her, one hand resting on his slowly rising rib cage. She'd cleaned up the papers, but the house still felt wrong, like a stranger's breath lingered in the corners. The questions circled. Was this someone from the company? A vet tech? A curious neighbor? Or was Rowan right? Had they stumbled onto something bigger, something someone wanted to bury? Her fingers closed around Blaze's collar, a silent reassurance. He didn't stir, but his ear flicked at her touch. In the dim light, Anna whispered, "You saved me once. I won't let them erase you now." She didn't yet know what they were up against, but she knew this. Someone had crossed a line, and she wasn't going to stay quiet. The envelope was thin, unassuming, no return address, just his name, Dr. Rowan Teller, DVM typed in block letters, slightly off-center. The kind of envelope that didn't warn, didn't plead. It simply arrived with the quiet authority of something premeditated. Rowan opened it in the clinic break room, still wearing his lab coat, hands smelling faintly of antiseptic and peanut butter dog treats. He scanned the first line and stopped breathing. "Dear Dr. Teller, this letter serves as formal notice of your immediate suspension from the State Veterinary Licensing Board, pending investigation." His stomach dropped. The words on the page swam in and out of focus, but one phrase screamed back at him like a siren. "Unverified medical claims causing public panic." He lowered the paper slowly, the sterile hum of the refrigerator suddenly loud in the silence. His mind clawed for reason. Fear-mongering? Panic? He wasn't a whistleblower. He hadn't gone public. Not yet. All he had done was compare case files, follow threads, ask careful questions. Apparently, that was enough. 30 minutes later, Anna found him sitting in his office, staring at the envelope like it was a landmine. "You look like someone stole your spine," she said softly, then noticed the letter. "What happened?" He handed it to her without speaking. She read it once, then again. Her jaw tightened. "Anonymous complaint?" she said. "Who would—" "Someone who doesn't want questions asked," Rowan replied bitterly. "They're accusing me of violating the ethics clause, of using my license to suggest unfounded medical correlations." Anna dropped into the chair across from him, eyes wide. "But it's not unfounded. You have spreadsheets, notes, labs." "I know," he said. "But none of it's peer-reviewed or published. That makes it opinion, not evidence." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You think it's canna-life?" "I think someone connected to it knows I've been looking too closely." That night, Rowan drafted an email to the other vets he'd quietly contacted. There were 9 cases in total 10, including Blaze, each dog over 8, all with sudden onset symptoms after starting canna-life Plus. He typed carefully, "Friends, I've received an anonymous complaint. As of today, I am under suspension. I cannot legally treat or publish while under review. Please back up any records you have. Someone doesn't want this story told. Rowan." He hovered over send for a long second, then clicked it. The next morning, a post appeared on a veterinary discussion forum he frequented. Concerned Vet 84. "Anyone else heard about Rowan Teller? Word is he's spreading panic about senior dog meds with zero backing. Could hurt people who need those drugs. Not cool to play conspiracy games with real patients." 3 likes, no comments. Then another. Hours later, K9RX Pro. "Rowan's a good vet. He helped my partner's dog years ago. But if he's gone off the deep end, someone needs to rein him in." The narrative was beginning to form. Rowan didn't reply. He just stared at the screen, rage and helplessness forming a tight knot under his ribs. It was starting. The reframing. Anna came by after sunset, Blaze trotting slowly beside her, wearing the softer recovery vest she'd sewn from an old hoodie. "He walked the hill today," she said quietly, sitting on the porch step beside Rowan. 14 minutes, 1 pause. Rowan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I read the posts," she added after a moment. "They're trying to paint you as reckless." "It's working," he said. Anna looked at Blaze, whose eyes blinked slow and calm in the twilight. "I don't know what the rules are for your license," she said, "but I do know you're the reason Blaze is still breathing." He didn't answer. She nudged him. "What are you going to do now?" Rowan exhaled slowly. "The data is solid, but data doesn't matter if they control the narrative. The only thing I can do now is get louder before they silence me completely." Anna nodded. Then, almost as an afterthought, she added, "Maybe it's time to stop thinking like a vet and start thinking like a reporter." He looked at her, and for the first time in 2 days, the corner of his mouth lifted. Later that night, Anna posted a short entry in her online journal. "Blaze ate a full bowl today. His tail flicked twice. I told Rowan about it, but he was holding a letter in his hands that looked like it had punched him in the gut. They're trying to discredit him, but I won't let them rewrite what I've seen. I know what brought Blaze back. I know who. And I know this is bigger than just one dog." She clicked publish, then reached for Blaze's paw. His eyes were closed, his chest rising slow and steady. But Anna had never felt more awake. The clinic parking lot was nearly empty, save for a single security light that flickered like it was breathing its last. Rowan locked up later than usual that night. He'd been cross-referencing liver enzyme charts for the 5th time, looking for any variable he might have missed. Blaze's numbers, Ellie's numbers, Jasper's. The pattern wasn't just holding, it was hardening. He pushed open the back door with a heavy sigh, keys jingling in one hand, a thermos in the other. The spring air was cool, quiet. Too quiet. Rowan didn't notice the man until the shadows shifted. A figure stepped out from behind the dumpster, tall, hooded, gloved. Rowan froze. "Can I help you?" he asked, voice steady but laced with caution. The man said nothing, just closed the distance slowly, deliberately, like someone unafraid of consequences. His boots scuffed the gravel in even, silent strides. Rowan backed up half a step, his hand instinctively moving to his phone, but the man moved faster, not violently, just with purpose. A gloved hand shot out and grabbed Rowan by the lapel of his coat, tugging him just close enough that breath sour and metallic hit his cheek. Then came the whisper. Not a threat, not a demand, just 7 words. Drop the investigation, or you'll lose more. Rowan barely had time to blink before the man released him and disappeared back into the dark, vanishing like smoke behind the fence. No punch, no weapon, no robbery, just a message. Rowan stood frozen in place for a full minute, heart hammering, until the clinic lights timed out behind him, and the world went black. Anna's phone rang at 12:47 a.m. She almost didn't answer, her body half draped over Blaze on the living room floor, the dog curled into a peaceful ball against her chest. But something in her gut made her reach for it. "Rowan?" she answered groggily. Silence. "Rowan, say something." "I was followed," came his voice, brittle and shallow. "Or maybe they were already there. I don't know. It wasn't a mugging. They didn't want money." Anna sat upright, heart jackhammering. "Where are you?" "In my car. Just left the clinic. I think I'm okay, physically." "What happened?" He told her, slowly, flatly, like a man recounting a dream he couldn't wake from. When he finished, Anna didn't speak right away. She just stared at Blaze, whose soft breathing anchored her in place. "They said, 'You'll lose more?'" she asked finally, voice like glass. Rowan hesitated. "Yeah," she closed her eyes. "Then it's not just you anymore." "I know." The next morning, Anna changed every lock in her house. She moved Blaze's bed closer to hers, installed a motion light on the porch. She stopped leaving her phone in the other room when she showered. But none of that surprised her. What surprised her was how clear her fear became. Not blinding, not paralyzing, just sharp, a new edge. She poured it into the journal Rowan had given her. Blaze's tail wagged this morning when I mentioned Rowan. It wasn't full strength, more of a hopeful twitch. But it was there. Someone came after Rowan last night, not to rob him, to scare him, and maybe it worked for a second, but I think they forgot something important. Blaze isn't the only one recovering. So am I. Rowan showed up later that day, unshaven, dark rings under his eyes, but something defiant sat in his posture. He handed her a flash drive. "What's this?" "Every lab result, every file, every case I've collected so far. If something happens to me, I want it with someone who gives a damn." Anna didn't blink. She took it, tucked it into her hoodie pocket without ceremony. "Thank you." They didn't say much else. But when Rowan knelt down to pet Blaze and Blaze lifted his head just barely to nuzzle against Rowan's wrist, Anna saw the flicker return to Rowan's eyes. Hope. Guarded, bruised, but real. That evening, as the sky purpled and the last birds quieted, Anna sat on the back step with Blaze and made a list in her head. Get external hard drive. Finish uploading video logs. Contact the other dog owners. Double-check the journal's backup settings. It was no longer just about saving Blaze. It was about not letting what happened to him happen again. She reached down and stroked Blaze's ear gently, whispering, "We're not backing down." The wind answered with a rustle of leaves. In the silence that followed, it almost sounded like applause. Anna hadn't expected the knock. It came early, 8:06 a.m., when she was still in her threadbare sweatshirt, sipping lukewarm coffee, one hand absently scratching Blaze's chest as he dozed beside her on the couch. The sun had just begun to filter through the slats of the living room blinds, casting long, solemn lines across the floorboards. The knock came again, firmer this time. 3 sharp raps. A pause. Then 2. Cautious, Anna rose. She moved to the door with her phone in hand, and Blaze, now alert, ears perked, though his body remained planted. She opened the door a crack. Standing on the porch was a woman she hadn't seen in almost 2 years, but would never forget. "Susan?" Susan Williams offered a tentative smile, hands clutching a worn leather purse. Her strawberry blonde hair, once always in a tight bun, now hung in soft waves, flecked with strands of gray. "I hope this isn't too early," she said. I heard what's been happening, and I thought, well, you helped my daughter. Maybe it's time someone helped you." Anna opened the door fully, her heart rising into her throat. "Come in." 2 years ago, Anna had stayed by a hospital bed for 19 straight hours. A teenage girl, barely 14, had been fighting septic shock after a ruptured appendix. The girl's name was Casey, Susan's daughter. Anna wasn't her assigned nurse that night, but the rotation had fallen short, and when Susan had crumpled into the hallway, sobbing silently into her hands, it was Anna who'd sat beside her, who'd walked her through every spike and dip in vitals, every beeping alarm. And now, it seemed, that night had never been forgotten. Susan sipped from the chipped ceramic mug Anna offered her and nodded toward Blaze, now resting his head on Anna's slippered foot. "He looks better," Anna smiled faintly. "He's trying." Susan didn't waste time with pleasantries. She pulled an envelope from her purse and slid it across the table. Inside was a clipping from The Chronicle, a local investigative piece from 3 years ago. The byline read, "Eli W. Matheson." "My husband," Susan said. "He's been chasing pharmaceutical skeletons since before we met. He's good." The kind of good that makes people nervous. Anna's fingers tightened on the paper. "You told him about Blaze?" "I told him everything I could piece together. About Canalife Plus, about Rowan's suspension, the break-in, the whisper in the parking lot. He's intrigued. More than that, he's furious." Anna sat back, mind spinning. Susan added gently, "He said he'd meet you tonight, if you're willing." That night, they met at a quiet cafe near the waterfront, one that closed early, but left its patio unlocked for late-night writers and quiet thinkers. Eli Matheson was not what Anna expected. His salt-and-pepper beard was trimmed, but not fussed over. His jacket was worn, patched at one elbow. But his eyes were sharp as scalpels. He didn't speak much at first, just listened, nodded, took notes in a tiny black moleskin with a pencil he twirled constantly between his fingers. Anna walked him through everything: Blaze's sudden decline, the failed scans, the miraculous turnaround after stopping Canalife Plus, the missing file, the flash drive Rowan gave her, the night someone whispered a threat into Rowan's ear. She expected Eli to raise an eyebrow, to challenge the credibility. He didn't. When she finished, he quietly asked, "Do you have the lot number from Blaze's medication?" Anna blinked. "Rowan does, I think. I'll need it." Then came the question she hadn't expected. "Why are you still here?" She frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Eli clarified, "after the break-in, after the parking lot threat, most people would walk away, find safer ground, let someone else carry it. Why are you still here?" Anna looked down. Blaze had come with her, lying patiently beneath the table, his body still a bit thin but stronger, more present. "Because he's still here," she said simply. "And if I walk away now, then what happened to him and to the other dogs just gets buried." Eli gave a small smile, not warm exactly, but respectful. "I can work with that." By the time she returned home, the moon was high and silver. Blaze met her at the door with a soft chuff, nudging her thigh with his nose as if to ask, "Is it safe now?" She bent down and kissed the top of his head. "No, not yet. But we're not alone anymore." Later that night, Anna opened the journal again. "Today I met a man who makes the truth uncomfortable for a living. He doesn't talk much, but his pen never stops. Something tells me he's exactly the kind of quiet fire this fight needs." She paused, looked over at Blaze, who had curled into a half-moon beside her writing chair. She added one more line, "I think the real battle hasn't even begun." The first email came at 3:12 a.m. Anna had fallen asleep on the couch again, Blaze curled beside her like a question mark. The soft chime of her phone stirred her awake. She rubbed her eyes and squinted at the screen. Subject line, "Saw your post. You're not alone." From Dr. Myra Timmons, DVM, Boise, Idaho. She sat up straighter, heart accelerating. The message was short. Had 3 cases last spring. All older dogs, all on Canalife Plus. 2 liver failures, 1 had seizures, no explanation. I flagged it to my distributor, never heard back. I'll talk if needed. Anna's hands trembled as she tapped out a reply, and it didn't stop there. By morning there were 7 more messages, then 11. Veterinarians, vet techs, dog owners, rescue volunteers, people with no reason to lie, no agenda, just worry. They told stories of sudden declines, erratic behavior, lost dogs who were fine until they weren't. The common thread: Canalife Plus, always the senior dosage, always brushed off as age-related decline. Anna compiled every story into the journal. Rowan helped verify the license numbers where he could. He was cautious, methodical, still stung by the board's suspension, but even he couldn't deny it anymore. "This isn't random," he muttered one afternoon, eyes scanning a spreadsheet Eli had helped organize. "It's a damn pattern." 3 days later, a quiet woman in her late 60s walked into Rowan's clinic. She wore a beige wool coat, even though it was 78 degrees outside. Her face was thin, lined with time and perhaps grief. She carried a manila envelope like it was something fragile. "I saw the notice on the forum," she said, "the one about the liver enzyme spikes." Rowan nodded carefully. "Are you a vet?" "Pathologist, retired, Dr. Ellen Zhao. I used to run tox screening for a pharmaceutical lab in San Diego. I have experience." She opened the envelope. Inside were 2 test results. Blurred edges, highlighter circles. Last year, I analyzed the tissue from a golden retriever, Benny. Belonged to a friend's daughter, 8 years old. He collapsed suddenly after a routine dental cleaning. They'd been giving him Canalife Plus for arthritis. Rowan leaned in. His eyes narrowed. Ellen continued, voice calm but unwavering. I found traces of a compound not listed on the medication label. It mimicked an NSAID but broke down into something hepatotoxic under certain metabolic conditions. It's subtle, very hard to detect unless you're looking for it. Anna stepped forward. Did you report it? She nodded. Sent it to Biopedics. Twice. No response. Then my lab access was revoked. My contract was restructured. I took early retirement. There was silence. The weight of what she'd just said settled like fog. Rowan finally broke it. Would you be willing to run the compound analysis again? On a sealed sample? Ellen didn't blink. I still have my equipment. I may be retired, but I haven't forgotten how to do my job. That night, Anna posted again. This time it wasn't just Blaze's story. It was all of them. She created a dedicated page, the Canalife Plus Ledger, and uploaded anonymized charts, symptom logs, and cross-state incident maps Eli had helped plot. Every post was double-sourced. Every claim tagged with dates, vet names when permitted, and outcomes. And then she clicked Publish. Within hours, the site had over 800 views. By midnight, it had 4,000. Messages flooded in. Not just from dog owners, but from former vet sales reps, 2 retired drug trial administrators, and 1 anonymous insider who claimed via a Proton Mail account that adjustments to the senior formula began after Q3 last year. Quiet change, no updated trials. Anna forwarded the message to Eli. He responded with a single line. This just became federal. Rowan sat across from Anna in the clinic's back office, the room dim except for the lamp casting golden light over his notebook. Blaze lay nearby, tail thumping lazily each time Anna shifted her seat. I always thought the vet board would protect us, Rowan said quietly. That if something was wrong, they'd want to know. Anna looked at him. They will, she replied, or they'll be forced to. He smiled, tired but a little lighter. Then his phone buzzed, a message from Ellen Zhao. Text received at 9:42 p.m. I've isolated the compound. It's real. I'm drafting the full analysis. But you need to be careful now. If they silenced me once, they'll try again. That night, Anna wrote one more entry in the journal, its spine now worn from constant use. They say the truth has a cost, that sometimes the silence is easier. But Blaze never asked to be part of a cover-up. He trusted us. All these dogs did. Now the silence is breaking, and nothing, not threats, not board suspensions, not erased files, can stop it anymore. The article went live at 6:07 a.m. No fanfare, no teaser campaign. Just a quietly dropped exposé nestled beneath the digital masthead of the Ridge Sentinel, a respected but regional paper, known more for wildfire alerts and water board disputes than national headlines. Title: Prescribed. Poison: The Hidden Dangers in a Trusted Pet Medication. By Eli Williams, Senior Investigative Correspondent. The header image was of Blaze, mid-recovery, his graying muzzle resting on Anna's lap, eyes open but distant, not dramatic, not staged, just real. Underneath, the tagline read, "What if the medication you gave your dog to help them live longer was the very thing killing them?" Within the first hour, The post had 3,000 shares. By noon, it was trending on Twitter under hashtag prescribed poison and hashtag justice for Blaze. The story itself was meticulous. Eli had pulled from over 20 verified cases, each documented with lab notes, vet statements, and timelines. Rowan's notes were quoted with permission, but his name withheld, given the current suspension. Ellen Zhao's toxicology breakdown made the cut too, boiled down for the layperson. The compound in question isn't listed on Canalife Plus's label. It mimics a standard anti-inflammatory but metabolizes into a compound known to stress the liver, especially in older canines. That alone should have triggered an FDA recall. There was no speculation, no dramatization, just facts and the lived pain behind them. Anna's journal entries, excerpted with her consent, were woven throughout the piece like stitches, threading emotion through evidence. One quote was bolded, set apart in a breakout box halfway down the page. "I trusted them. I trusted that if I gave Blaze the best, he'd stay with me longer. I never imagined I was helping to poison him." It hit like a hammer. By the time Anna refreshed the article link at 3:45 p.m., it had over 92,000 views. She nearly dropped her phone. "I think it's going viral," she whispered aloud, though there was no one in the room but Blaze. The old shepherd looked up at her from his bed in the kitchen, tail brushing once against the tile. It was the same tail that hadn't moved for days, back when she thought she might lose him. Now it swayed again, soft, steady, like the tick of a second hand in a clock that refused to stop. She reached down and rested her hand on his shoulder. "We're not alone anymore." That evening, Biopetics, Inc. issued a 2-line press statement. "We take safety concerns seriously and are reviewing the allegations outlined in today's article. We have no further comment at this time." It landed like a whisper in a storm, because by then, thousands of comments had flooded the article's thread. My Golden passed from sudden liver failure 2 months ago. He was on Canalife Plus. My vet brushed me off when I asked about the side effects. Now I'm not so sure. I work in distribution. We flagged issues last fall. Nothing changed. And then came the real blow. A user posted a screenshot from a leaked internal memo time-stamped 5 months earlier. It read, "Do not respond to inquiries about compound interaction issues related to Canalife Plus until official review is complete. Direct all press to legal. Delete non-FDA approved documentation immediately." The document appeared legitimate. The internet took it as gospel. By midnight, Biopetics' stock had dropped 11.4%. By morning, 26%. News outlets picked it up one by one. First Petline Weekly, then NBC Local, then CNN Morning Brief. The phrase corporate pet pharma negligence was spoken aloud on national television. Anna's inbox exploded. Some emails were from grieving pet parents. Others came from reporters, regulatory agencies, even a pair of lawyers from a consumer protection firm in New York. But one email stopped her cold. Subject line, "They're watching you now." From unknown. "You don't know how high this goes. Be careful who you trust. And keep that journal safe. It's not over." She stared at the screen. Then she clicked forward, sent it straight to Eli. No note. He would understand. Rowan called late, breathless. "They're launching an internal investigation," he said. 3 veterinary boards have contacted me off the record. This story, it moved the needle." Anna barely knew what to say, except, "They tried to silence you." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "They tried to silence the dogs. We're just the ones learning how to listen." At 2:17 a.m., Anna stepped outside with Blaze. The street was still. Somewhere a sprinkler ticked. Blaze took a few steps ahead, sniffed a neighbor's bush, then turned back. No leash, no rush. Just the simple grace of a dog who had nearly died, now living again. She sat on the porch steps, opened her journal, and wrote beneath that night's date. Eli called it a story. But it's more than that now. It's a reckoning. The world's watching. They're angry. They're hurting, but they're waking up. And Blaze is still here, still walking, still fighting, just like we are. The call came just after sunrise. Anna was in the kitchen, absently stirring Blaze's prescription food, when her phone buzzed. Unknown caller. Her thumb hovered. She wasn't in the mood. Not after the flood of press requests, legal jargon, and internet fury that had turned her life into a chessboard she didn't know how to play. But something in her gut told her to pick up. Hello? A pause, then a low, smooth voice. Ms. Morrell, this is Gregory Caldwell. I'm the CEO of Biopedics. She froze. Outside, Blaze lifted his head from his dog bed, ears pricking at the sudden silence in her breath. I'm sorry, she said slowly, trying to steady her voice. I understand this is unexpected. I would have gone through the usual channels, Caldwell continued. But your story, Blaze's story, landed on my desk in a way I couldn't ignore. There was something strange in his tone. Not corporate, not cold, something almost reverent. I saw the photo, he said. The one in the article. The dog with the scar above his eye. That's Blaze. Anna hesitated. Yes. A deep exhale crackled through the line, then softly. Then, I owe him my life. Caldwell asked if she remembered the Crestwood flood. She did. Everyone in the region did. It was the spring of 2015, weeks of unrelenting rain, levees failing like matchsticks. Entire neighborhoods swallowed. Anna had been volunteering with a rescue team back then, long before she was a full-time vet tech. She remembered how Blaze, barely more than a pup, had pushed through a half-collapsed hallway to bark at a closed cellar door, alerting the team to a man unconscious inside. The man had been pulled out just minutes before the floor gave way. No name, no photo, just one of those miracle dog moments filed away in memory. I was that man, Caldwell said. I never saw the dog's handler. I blacked out before they carried me out. But I never forgot the dog's eyes. Anna leaned against the counter, stunned. It wasn't just the article, he went on. It was him. I recognized that scar, that gaze. And I had to know. There was another pause. I want to meet you. And Blaze. Anna didn't respond right away. In truth, she didn't know how to feel. Part of her wanted to hang up. This was the man at the top of the company they were exposing, the one whose silence had allowed dogs to die, whose legal team had likely orchestrated the campaign against Rowan. But now he was speaking like someone broken open. She could hear it under his words. A man who had spent years building walls, suddenly standing before the one thing that had once saved him. I don't want to smooth things over, he added quickly. This isn't damage control. I know what's happening. I know what your article triggered. I know what the reports say. But I also know what I owe. His voice tightened. Please, I'd like to explain in person. And thank him. You don't owe me anything in return. But I'd be grateful. Later that morning, Anna told Rowan. He was quiet, arms crossed in the doorway of her clinic's break room, where they now met most mornings before the chaos of emails and updates began. "So," he said at last, "the man who sent lawyers and silence now sends gratitude?" She smiled faintly. "You think it's a trap?" "I think it's strange timing." She didn't argue, but she also didn't dismiss it, because something in Caldwell's voice had rung true. And because Blaze had lifted his head when he heard it, his eyes going soft the way they did when he recognized someone from his distant, fractured past. "You're going?" Rowan asked. Anna nodded slowly. "I think I have to." 2 days later, she stood in front of a quiet private residence outside Redwood Park, Blaze at her side. No press, no guards, just a modest craftsman-style home with ivy up one side and the faint scent of wood smoke in the air. Caldwell opened the door himself. He was older than the photos showed, silver at his temples, lines etched around his eyes, but not cold. Not anymore. His expression faltered the moment he saw Blaze. His hand went to his chest, then fell away as if he didn't know what to do with it. "I didn't think I'd remember," he murmured. "But I do." Blaze took a cautious step forward, nose lifted, then another. When he reached Caldwell, he sat, calm, watchful, not in fear, in recognition. "I thought you were a ghost," Caldwell whispered. "That maybe I made you up in the dark." Anna's throat tightened. For the first time in weeks, she saw Blaze not as a patient, not as a symbol, not even as a victim, but as a survivor, as a savior, as someone whose life had already bent the world once before, and maybe, just maybe, would do it again. The air inside Caldwell's study was hushed, almost reverent. Walnut shelves lined with medical journals and framed patents wrapped the room like a cocoon. The only sound was the steady tick of a bronze wall clock, just loud enough to feel symbolic. Anna sat with Blaze at her feet, her hand resting on his neck. Rowan stood near the window, arms crossed, eyes sharp, not as a vet today, but as a man who had been discredited, silenced, and warned. Caldwell poured them each a glass of water with a kind of ritual slowness, then sat. No legal counsel, no corporate buffer, just him. "I want to start with what I owe you," he said quietly. "Both of you." No one spoke. Caldwell inhaled, bracing himself. "The truth is, we knew." Anna's chest tightened. Rowan didn't move. Caldwell continued, his voice even but heavy. "We began receiving anomaly reports 2 years ago, sporadic liver toxicity in geriatric canines with specific markers. The numbers were small, the symptoms inconsistent. But they were there." He reached into a folder on the coffee table and slid a document across to them. Rowan picked it up. His eyes scanned fast, then stopped. "CLP5 variants," he murmured. Caldwell nodded. "A genetic subset found in about 7% of older dogs. We flagged it early, but our internal review board labeled the data non-conclusive. We were advised to monitor quietly and avoid a product alert unless the fatalities crossed a certain threshold." Anna stared at him. "So you waited?" "No," Caldwell said, gently correcting her. "They waited. I didn't even know about the final suppression until 6 months ago." Rowan's jaw flexed. "You're the CEO, and Biopedics is a hydra. I can sign off on funding, but the safety data is controlled by compliance and legal. By the time I saw the internal audit, the campaign had already shifted. Marketing had doubled down on senior dog outreach." He paused. "I pushed back, but not hard enough." Anna's voice trembled. "So dogs died. Blaze nearly died, and you what? Had meetings about optics?" Caldwell didn't flinch. "I buried the report. I regret that more than I can explain. But after seeing Blaze again, After learning what this drug did to dogs who trusted us, I'm done defending it." He opened another folder. "This is a full timeline of our internal knowledge. Every flagged case, every memo, every decision not to disclose. I'm giving it to you, and I'm submitting it to the FDA today." Rowan reached for the file with hesitant hands. "Why now?" "Because there's no other way forward," Caldwell said. "Because I don't want to be the man who owed his life to a dog and stood silent while others like him suffered." He turned to Anna. "I want your help. I'm initiating a full recall of CanaLife Plus. I want oversight reforms, third-party testing, and a board reorganization. And I want Blaze's case to be the one that forces that change." Anna felt her throat close. This wasn't the fight she'd expected. This wasn't denial. This was confession, the kind that didn't seek redemption, only accountability. "Why us?" she asked. "Because Rowan didn't stop when you warned him. Because you didn't stay quiet when your dog got better. Because you made the cost visible." Rowan narrowed his eyes. "And what happens to the ones who buried the truth?" "They'll be gone," Caldwell said, voice cold now. "And if they try to run, I'll make sure they're found." The meeting stretched into hours. Legal steps, regulatory obligations, how to notify the public without sugarcoating it. When Anna and Rowan finally stood to leave, Caldwell walked them to the door. Blaze followed, his gait steadier now, stronger, as if even he understood that something had shifted. Caldwell knelt, ignoring his $1,000 suit. "I never forgot you," he whispered, stroking Blaze's fur. "You saved me once. Maybe this time I get to return the favor." Blaze leaned into him. Not forgiveness, just recognition. And maybe that was enough. The sharp click of the double doors slamming open shattered the quiet. Caldwell's assistant barely managed to step aside before the man stormed in, red-faced, breath clipped, eyes scanning until they locked on the file in Rowan's hands. "Is this what we've come to?" Malcolm Reese spat. "Handing over internal records to activists like them?" Anna stepped instinctively in front of Blaze. Rowan rose slowly, not startled, just steady, like he'd seen this kind of fury before. Caldwell stayed seated. His voice, however, turned to steel. "You're not welcome here, Malcolm." The man, impeccably dressed in a slate-gray suit that looked too polished for someone unraveling, threw down a lanyard with the Biopedics logo still attached. His hand trembled, not from fear, but from rage held too long. "I gave this company its numbers. I kept us lean through 3 product failures. And now you want to torch it all because a dog got sick?" The room dropped 10 degrees. Blaze's ears flattened. Caldwell stood. "That dog has a name. And he almost died because you approved a suppression memo after we flagged the liver irregularities." Malcolm laughed bitterly. "Suppression? No. We reallocated narrative control. We had investors breathing down our necks, clinical trials stuck in review limbo, and you wanted to pull our golden product because of a handful of dying dogs past their prime?" Anna flinched. She looked at Blaze's quiet eyes, the pink scar near his left flank, the gentle weight of his body beside hers. He wasn't past his prime. He was still hers. Rowan's voice sliced through the air like a scalpel. "How many dogs were acceptable to sacrifice before it became inconvenient to your profit margins?" Malcolm turned, sneering. "You're a vet, not a shareholder. You wouldn't understand the calculus." Caldwell stepped forward. "This is over, Malcolm. You're fired. Your clearance is revoked, effective immediately. If you step foot on Biopedics property again, I'll have security escort you out in cuffs." But Malcolm didn't flinch. His smile shifted uglier now, curved by something deeper than arrogance, something closer to menace. "You think this is just me? You think you can cut out one bad piece and save the body? You have no idea how many signatures are on those documents, how far back this goes." Rowan moved slightly closer to Anna, instinct tightening his stance. Blaze growled, low, soft, but guttural, as if the air itself warned them all. Caldwell's voice didn't shake. "Then start naming names, because I'm tearing it all down." Malcolm shook his head. "You'll never make it in time. You think the FDA's your savior? They've had copies of those flagged reports for months. The silence wasn't accidental." Anna's stomach dropped. This wasn't just about a company. It wasn't even just about dogs. It was a system, one with rot deeper than they'd imagined. "You signed off on the risk profiles," Caldwell said, his voice quiet now, laced with disgust. "You knew the damage, and you let it grow." Malcolm straightened his jacket. "Because dogs don't vote, and because the world runs on what people don't know." He turned toward the door. "Good luck with your crusade. Just make sure you watch your back." And just like that, he was gone. Silence bloomed in his wake, tainted bitter. Caldwell rubbed his temples. "That man once cried when we opened our senior rescue program. I thought he believed." Anna exhaled slowly. "He did, but not in the same thing we do." Rowan flipped through the file again, brow furrowed. "He just confirmed something we didn't know. There's collusion, not just inside biopedics, regulators, partners, maybe even supply chains." Caldwell nodded grimly. "Then the story gets bigger and messier." Blaze lifted his head and looked at Anna, and she knew, in that silent exchange between fur and heartbeat, that this wasn't over. Not even close. The morning light filtered through soft curtains. Anna sat beside Blaze, her German shepherd, who wasn't waking up like he used to. No stretch, no huff, no wag, just labored breaths, pale gums, a limp paw. Her hands trembled. At the clinic, Rowan worked fast. IV, oxygen, blood draw. No words wasted. After 20 minutes, he finally looked at her. "His kidneys and liver are failing. This time, it's worse." Anna's voice cracked. "But he was getting better." "I know," Rowan said. "But there's a secondary reaction. Maybe a contaminant." She sat beside Blaze, pressing her forehead to his. "Not like this. Not when we just found our rhythm again." Later that day, Rowan brought in test results. A trace compound unknown. Suspicion flickered. "Are you saying this wasn't a relapse?" Anna asked. Rowan didn't answer, but his silence said everything. Then the confirmation came. Ethylene glycol, antifreeze, industrial grade, deliberate poisoning. Anna's world tilted. "He never goes near garages. We don't even have a car." "It wasn't an accident," Rowan said. "This was targeted. Within the last 72 hours. She remembered the backyard, the one sharp bark, the silence, the broken camera. Someone had done this, to silence a dog who knew too much, who had become a symbol. That night she wrote in her journal, "Suspected poisoning confirmed. Motive, silence." She sat beside Blaze, gripping his paw. "You survived floods, pulled kids from rivers, warned of seizures. You've beaten death before," she whispered. "But this time, they knew your name." When Blaze gave his last breath, it was long and soft like letting go. Anna froze, then folded into silence. The next morning, under gray skies, Anna buried him beneath the dogwood tree behind the clinic. No gloves, just her hands, just grief. She wrapped him in his flannel blanket, pressed the earth gently over him. A small wooden cross marked the grave. He never let go, even when we did. "I should have protected you," she whispered. Rowan stepped beside her. "You did," he said quietly. "You gave him peace." Anna looked up, eyes burning. "They killed him." "I know." She stood. "We're going to finish this." That night the house felt empty in a way silence couldn't hide. She clutched his collar, still faintly smelling of hymn leaves, fur, safety. Sleep came in fragments, memories flashing. Blaze running, nudging her hand, lying beside her during panic attacks. And then a dream. He stood under the dogwood, whole again, strong, wind in his fur. He looked at her with eyes that still understood. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Detective Isabel Morales had seen a lot in her 15 years on the force people who could lie without blinking, crimes that wore smiles in the daylight. But this one hit different. This one had 4 paws, a wagging tail, and a name etched in a wooden cross beneath a dogwood tree. She stood just beyond the clinic garden, arms crossed, eyes on the spot where Blaze had been laid to rest. She hadn't known him, but she knew the look in Anna's eyes. She'd seen it before in a mother whose boy had died on her watch. There was a weight to that grief, a precision to it, like something had been taken that could never be replaced. "Let's go over it again," she said softly, her voice even, controlled. Anna handed her the file Rowan had compiled: lab results, photographs, dosage histories, the toxicology report that made Morales' stomach knot. "Ethylene glycol," Rowan said. "Levels high enough to cause acute renal failure. No accidental exposure that we can find. Blaze wasn't near any sources. Not in the clinic. Not at home." Morales nodded. "You're saying it was deliberate?" "I'm saying someone poisoned him," Rowan replied, jaw tight. "And they knew exactly what they were doing." Anna hadn't spoken since Morales arrived. Her silence was sharp like glass, held too tightly. She finally broke it with a single question. "Did you pull the footage?" Morales gave a slow nod. "Just finished reviewing it." She tapped the tablet in her hand and brought up the feed. The camera angle was grainy, the color washed out, but the timestamp didn't lie. 3 nights before Blaze relapsed, 2:46 a.m. A figure appeared at the edge of the frame, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a hood. But it was the way he moved that caught Morales' attention. Not like a thief, not frantic or cautious, deliberate, purposeful. He carried a small box, no larger than a lunch pail, paused at the gate, glanced up at the camera as if daring it to see him. And for a moment, as the figure turned his head, the profile became unmistakable. Anna's breath caught. "Malcolm Reese," Morales zoomed in. "Resembles him strongly. Facial points match. Walk pattern matches. He was CFO at Biopetics until 2 weeks ago, fired during your meeting with Caldwell." Rowan cursed under his breath. Anna stared at the screen like it had betrayed her. "But why?" she whispered. "Why Blaze? What did he gain?" Morales locked eyes with her. "Because you humiliated him. You put a name to the cover-up. Caldwell turned whistleblower, and now Reese is radioactive. Blaze was the symbol. Taking him out sends a message." Rowan's voice was low, shaking. "He killed a dog to silence a truth." Morales nodded grimly. "It's not the first time someone's made it look accidental, and it won't be the last." She flipped to another screen. Surveillance from a neighbor's porch cam. The man matching Reese's build parked a rental 2 streets down, left the engine running, walked casually through a side alley, disappeared out of frame, returned 6 minutes later, empty-handed. "Box was probably bait," Morales said. "Meat laced with antifreeze. Dogs don't smell it. It's sweet." Anna closed her eyes, fingers curling into her palm. She didn't cry, she didn't scream. But when she opened her eyes again, they were different. Steadier, colder. "Do you have enough to arrest him?" Rowan asked. Morales hesitated. "Not yet. No direct facial recognition. No fingerprints. Just circumstantial timing and resemblance. But I've already pulled his rental records, and I've got someone checking credit card traces." Anna's voice was low, deliberate. "So, we wait?" Morales looked between them, then pocketed the tablet. "No," she said. "We keep digging, but now we know what kind of man we're dealing with." She knelt beside Blaze's grave and pulled from her coat a small dog biscuit wrapped in a Ziploc, the kind every owner carried around like a habit. She placed it gently near the cross. "My Gracie's 10, she said. "Golden retriever. Saved my son from drowning when he was 5. I know what it's like to owe a dog your whole heart." She stood again, eyes sharp. "I won't let this go." Anna nodded once, and as Morales turned to leave, Anna whispered, almost to herself, "We're not done, Blaze. Not even close." The morning Malcolm Reese was arrested, Crestwood lay under a steel-gray sky. Detective Isabel Morales stood outside his glass house with a warrant in her pocket. The door opened before they knocked. Reese stood there in a crisp shirt, coffee in hand, like he'd expected them. "We're here to execute a search warrant," Morales said. He stepped aside, calm, smirking, until they opened the garage. A faint chemical scent hit them. Ethylene glycol. Officer Leeds found the jug tucked behind paint cans. Morales cracked the seal. Pale blue liquid shimmered inside. "Matches Blaze's toxicology," she said. "With an additive only synthesized by Langford Chem, the same lab Biopetics used. You signed those requisitions." Reese's composure cracked. "This is political," he snapped. "You don't have a confession." "No," Morales replied. "But we have surveillance, rental records, and now, the toxin. You buried yourself." As the cuffs locked, rain began to fall. Slow, cold, like something being cleansed. From across the street, Anna watched in silence. She pressed her hand to the pendant on her necklace, Blaze's tag hanging from it. Rowan murmured, "It won't bring him back." "I know," Anna said. "But it might stop the next one." Back in the garage, Morales found sealed vials, unapproved Biopetic samples. Reese's crime wasn't just personal, it was systemic. By day 3, the world called it the Blaze effect. Social media exploded. Vets, pet owners, whistleblowers, stories poured in. Hashtags, paintings, a child's clay sculpture. One message from a girl read, "I thought it was my fault. You made me brave." Then came Caldwell's video. Unshaven, tired, he looked into the camera. "I failed," he said. "Years ago I was saved from floodwaters by a canine named Blaze. Under my watch, warnings were ignored. Dogs died. I can't undo that, but I can try to make it right." He announced a recall of all compounds under investigation, terminations of those who buried data. The Blaze Fund for affected pets, $12 million for treatment, research, and watchdog groups. Then came his final words. "Blaze didn't just save my life. His story might save thousands more. This isn't an apology. It's a promise." That night, Anna sat on the porch with Blaze's collar in her lap. Her inbox pinged because of Blaze. A woman wrote about her mutt, Max, saved by early warnings. A war veteran wrote about the dog that helped him walk again, letter after letter, story after story. Rowan joined her, handing her tea. "You did it," he said. Anna shook her head. "He did." They sat in silence beneath the dogwood tree where Blaze rested. The wind carried the faint scent of blossoms. The next morning, packages arrived at the clinic: paw print candles, stitched collars, crayon drawings with crooked dog faces. Anna placed them in a wooden box marked Legacy. It wasn't over, but something had shifted. Not revenge, a beginning. The letter arrived without warning. Just a crisp envelope hand-delivered to the clinic at dawn. Anna nearly mistook it for another condolence note. Inside, the new Biopedics letterhead, signed by Gregory Caldwell and Dr. Aisha Rahman. They weren't asking forgiveness. They were offering responsibility, a seat on the Independent Oversight Committee. Rowan found her still staring at it after hours. He read it quietly and said, "At least they're trying to do it right." Anna's grip tightened. "I don't know if I can sit where dogs like Blaze were just data points." "That's why you should be there," Rowan replied. "So they remember he wasn't." She stepped into the garden, to the blooming dogwood tree where Blaze lay buried. The carved stone at its base read, "Forever loyal." Grief pulled her in two directions, one craving distance, the other demanding action. Rowan said gently, "You don't have to decide today." "I already have," she whispered. "If I say no, someone else takes that seat. Someone who never held a dying dog and called it justice." She touched the bark. "I don't trust Biopedics, but I trust what Blaze would have done." That afternoon, Anna wrote back. She would join, with strict conditions: full transparency, whistleblower protections, a permanent external ethics seat. 2 hours later, Caldwell called. He didn't argue, just said, "Thank you." That night, Anna sat beneath the dogwood, silent, surrounded by petals like falling memories. Blaze's grave was quiet but not empty. She remembered how he'd entered her life burned, starving but defiant. She had loved before Blaze, but never known loyalty that pure. "This wasn't your fight," she whispered, "but you made it yours." It wasn't about forgiving Biopedics. It was about bearing witness, keeping the promise she saw in Blaze's eyes. "This isn't for them," she said aloud. "This is how I keep your mission alive." Rowan emerged from the porch. Anna nodded. "Tell Caldwell I'll join, but not as a token." He smiled. "Already drafted your terms, just waiting on your voice." She looked to the sky, stars blooming overhead. This wasn't healing, but it was a start. The Biopedics Oversight Wing gleamed with glass and light. Anna knew better. Glass could reflect, distort, conceal. She sat flanked by scientists and veterinarians she'd personally chosen. Caldwell stood at the front, sleeves rolled, eyes tired but honest. Anna flipped through data on BPX 317, a promising new arthritis drug, but in the appendix she found it. Subset CA, rare but serious liver reaction in shepherd-type breeds. "This was buried," she said aloud. A scientist stammered, "Statistically insignificant." "To you," she snapped, "not to the dogs who died." Caldwell stepped forward. "We'll rerun the panels and post the findings to open access." She nodded once. "Good." Then he reached into a folder and held up a label, "Blaze, for the ones who carry us, even when it hurts." "We were going to name it after a founder," Caldwell said, but that didn't feel right anymore. He placed the label in front of Anna. "I wanted to ask your blessing." She stared at it. Her voice came steady. You can use his name if the trials are triple-checked, verified, and the risks printed clearly. No more footnotes, no more deaths in fine print. "Understood," Caldwell said. The vote passed with new conditions, tighter protocols, and halved review intervals. When Anna left the building, she paused beneath the etched motto she had demanded biopaedics adopt. Transparency is not a gesture. It's a debt. Outside, wind stirred, and in that hush, she almost heard paws on tile, not returning, just walking beside her. The air in the civic hall shimmered with early summer warmth and something else, something heavier than heat. Rows of chairs lined the open-air courtyard, all facing a modest wooden stage draped in ivy and light. At the center, a bronze sculpture stood under cloth, waiting. In the front row sat Anna, her hands folded tightly in her lap, a delicate black ribbon pinned near her collarbone, Blaze's tag strung around it like a medallion. It had been exactly 1 year since the final breath, since the garden burial beneath the dogwood tree that still bloomed, though she hadn't returned since. But today was not about mourning. Today was about what Blaze left behind. The Blaze Foundation's first annual ceremony was never meant to be grand. And yet, the courtyard was filled to the edges. Families with dogs at their feet, veterinarians in white coats holding hands with people they once saved from despair. A mother spoke softly to her child beside her. "That's the dog from the news, sweetheart. The one who changed everything." From behind the stage, Rowan approached Anna. He no longer carried the hollowed-out look of those early months. His shoulders were squared again, his gaze steady. Beside him walked Detective Morales in civilian clothes, her Labrador rescued from a failed Canarex trial, sitting obediently at her heel. "You ready?" Rowan asked gently. Anna nodded. They stepped up together. The podium was plain, no logo, just wood and truth. Anna took a breath, let it steady her. "When we lost Blaze," she began, her voice clear but heavy, "I thought the story had ended, that what we'd uncovered would be buried beside him. But I was wrong." Behind her, a screen lit up. Quietly, images rolled. Dogs once near death, now leaping through fields, shelters with medicine they never could afford before, clinics posting public trial data for the first time, a slow, swelling reel of real change. "In just 1 year," she continued, "we've helped over 8,000 pets receive safe treatments through verified programs. 23 states have passed legislation protecting veterinary whistleblowers. And Biopaedics, under new federal oversight, has instituted open genomic testing protocols for all future drugs." Applause stirred gently, not thunderous but warm, respectful. Anna stepped back. Then Caldwell took the stage, not in a suit, but in sleeves rolled like that first day of reckoning. "Let's be clear," he said. "We failed, and animals paid the price. But people like Anna and Rowan held us to account. This isn't redemption, it's restitution." He turned to the sculpture, lifted the cloth, a moment of held breath. There, immortalized in bronze, stood Blaze mid-stride, ears alert, eyes forward, not in pain, not in death, but alive, as he had been before the injections, before the illness, before the betrayal. At his feet was a plaque. Blaze, he bore the burden so others wouldn't have to. Anna felt her throat tighten. No tears, not yet, but the kind of ache that both hurts and heals. A small girl came forward, clutching her own dog's leash, a three-legged shepherd mix with a pink bandana. She offered Anna a folded card. Inside, in blocky handwriting, was written, "Thank you for saving my best friend." Anna knelt, placed her hand gently on the girl's shoulder. "I didn't," she said softly. "Blaze did." As the sun dipped lower, music played, not loud, just a cello and a violin tracing the outlines of memory. Rowan stood beside her, saying nothing. He didn't need to. They had all carried pieces of Blaze's pain. Now, at last, they carried something more. A beginning. The last guests had drifted from the courtyard, their murmurs replaced by the chirping of birds settling into twilight. String lights blinked overhead like tired stars. Anna stood alone near the bronze statue of Blaze, her fingers resting lightly on the edge of the base, tracing the engraved letters as though memorizing them again. Rowan approached quietly, 2 steaming cups of coffee in hand. "They all left?" she asked, not turning. "Most. Morales took the rest of the press. Said she'd intercept any last-minute vultures." Anna gave a faint smile, the kind that never quite reached her eyes. They sipped in silence. The warmth of the coffee didn't reach the chill in her chest. It had been a good day, objectively. People had cried, hugged, told her how Blaze had changed their lives. But the quiet after the crowd, the echo of the ceremony ending, was the hardest part, because it reminded her this wasn't just about justice or policy, it was about loss, always circling back to loss. Rowan cleared his throat, hesitant. "There's, something I want to ask you," he said. "But I need you to know there's no pressure. None." She glanced over. His tone had shifted, gentler, uncertain. "There's a place I volunteer now," he began. "A small rehab shelter outside of town. Mostly rescues from failed labs, abandoned cases, some from biopedics trials. A couple weeks ago they got a young German shepherd mix. Maybe 2 years old, male, smart, skittish. Came in with burns on his side from a botched injection site." Anna looked down at her coffee. "He's been improving fast," Rowan continued. "He doesn't bite, doesn't flinch at bowls anymore, but he latches on. To people he trusts. Hard." The air stilled between them. "What are you saying, Rowan?" "I'm saying," he exhaled, "you don't have to meet him. But if there's even a small part of you that wants to, he's there. And his name is Ranger." The name cut sharper than expected. Too close, too familiar. Blaze had once responded to the same name before she'd renamed him, before they'd made each other new. Anna shook her head lightly, trying to steady her breath. "I don't know if I can start again." "I'm not asking you to," Rowan said, "just to consider that maybe this isn't starting over, maybe it's continuing." The thought made her throat ache. She had sworn, the day she buried Blaze beneath the dogwood, that she wouldn't try to replace him. That love like his came once. But maybe this wasn't about replacement. Maybe it was about allowing the space he'd carved out in her heart to be filled with something living again. Not the same. Never the same. Just possible. "Is he anything like Blaze?" she asked softly. Rowan thought for a moment. "No, not in the ways you'd expect. He's leaner, more nervous, hates rain, loves squeaky toys, has this weird habit of pushing his food bowl under furniture like he's saving it for later. But there's something in his eyes, that same haunted watchfulness, that same hope buried under hurt." Anna closed her eyes. For a moment it wasn't today. It was the first night she found Blaze, curled in her kitchen, ribs like piano keys, but tail thumping weakly when she knelt. The first night she realized love didn't always arrive with joy. It sometimes came with fear, wounds, and the desperate question, "Will you stay, even if I'm broken?" She swallowed hard. "I need time," she whispered. Rowan nodded, not pushing. "Of course." But something about the weight of the silence afterward told them both the seed had already been planted. Later, after Rowan had gone and the lights dimmed, Anna found herself lingering once more beside the statue. A breeze rustled the ivy. Somewhere distant, a dog barked. She knelt, placing her hand gently on the cool bronze paw. "I don't know if I'm ready," she murmured, voice trembling. "But if you were here, Blaze, would you want me to say yes?" The wind answered with the scent of dogwood blossoms. And in her heart, something shifted. Not closure, but opening. The clinic sat on the edge of town, tucked between a stretch of fallow fields and a narrow country road whose trees bowed low as if in prayer. Anna pulled into the gravel lot slowly, her hands trembling on the wheel. It had taken her a week to decide. A week of sitting by Blaze's grave in the garden, rereading the letters strangers had sent, of tracing his old leash between her fingers like it still held his warmth. Today, she carried nothing, no leash, no expectations, just breath and memory. Inside, the receptionist gave her a quiet nod. "They're out back," she said softly, as if even the air in this place understood what it meant for someone like Anna to walk through its doors. She followed the familiar hallway. It smelled of antiseptic and wet fur, but not in a harsh way, more like worn flannel, lived in, real. A low hum of barking filtered through the walls, but one voice rang clearer, lighter, not frantic, just waiting. When she reached the last enclosure, she paused. There he was. Ranger. He wasn't lying down like the others. He was sitting still but alert, ears perked, head tilted slightly to the left. There was a small pink scar on his right flank. His fur was the dusty kind of tan, the kind that catches sunlight and holds it. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. They weren't Blaze's eyes, but they carried the same question. "Can you see me beyond the damage?" She knelt, pressing her palm to the gate. Ranger stood. Then, tentative, careful as a heartbeat, he took one step forward, then another, and rested his forehead against the metal bars, right where her hand waited. It wasn't dramatic. No tail wagging, no leaps of joy. Just stillness, just trust. Tears stung her eyes, her voice caught in her throat. "He remembers faces," Rowan said from behind. She hadn't heard him enter. "He's only done that for 2 people." She didn't turn, didn't need to. Her hand slipped through the bars, resting lightly behind Ranger's ear. "He's not a replacement," she whispered. "No," Rowan agreed. "He's a beginning." They opened the gate. No leash, no command. Ranger stepped out slowly and looked up at her, tail swaying just slightly, like the flicker of a match before it catches flame. They walked out together, past the other enclosures, past the front desk, past the lobby where sunlight filtered through old blinds and dust motes danced in the quiet air. Outside, the morning was warm. The breeze held no weight today. The trees rustled gently above them, and the gravel crunched underfoot like the earth was breathing along with her. Ranger stayed close, not pressed against her, but present attuned. Anna looked up at the sky. It was the kind of blue Blaze used to chase with his eyes during their long walks, the kind that stretched wide and open, as if daring the broken-hearted to begin again. She exhaled. "Come on," she said softly to Ranger. "Let's go home." They reached the car. Before opening the door, she paused, staring at the horizon. Then she knelt beside him, cradled his face gently in her hands, and whispered into the warm fur between his ears, "We're not done yet, Blaze. There's still work to do." Ranger nuzzled her cheek, and somewhere, in a way words can't explain, a promise passed between them, a vow not to forget, but also to keep going, because rescue was never just about saving. Sometimes it was about being brave enough to be saved again. Blaze's story isn't just about loss, it's about legacy. Through every step Anna took, through every heartbeat that Ranger shared, we're reminded that love leaves echoes. German shepherds like Blaze are more than animals. They are protectors, companions, and silent witnesses to our darkest hours and brightest dawns. Their loyalty teaches us resilience, their courage inspires justice, and their presence heals wounds words cannot reach. This journey, marked by pain, perseverance, and purpose, calls on all of us to do better, to love deeper, to speak up when others stay silent, to protect those who cannot ask for help, and perhaps most importantly, to believe in second chances, not just for animals, but for people too. Whether it's starting over, taking in a rescue, or standing up for what's right, we all have the power to be someone's Blaze, someone's safe place, someone's beginning. Because in a world that too often forgets, stories like this remind us the bond between a human and a dog is never just companionship. It's a silent promise that no one walks alone. Not if we can help it, not if love still leads the way.